Imagine this. A man stands in the middle of a crowd, voice raised, fists clenched, face red with fury. To most people watching, he appears powerful, commanding attention, radiating dominance. But Nietzsche would see something very different. He would see a man who has lost control. Not a symbol of strength, but of weakness. Because in Nietzsche's world, true power does not scream. It does not tremble. And it never begs to be acknowledged. Anger, Nietzsche believed, is not power. It is a symptom of inner chaos, of a soul that has not yet mastered itself. When you lash out in rage, you are not commanding the world. You are revealing that the world still commands you. How often have you confused force with strength, raised voices with confidence, control with courage? Think back to the last time you were truly angry. Did you feel powerful, or did you feel possessed? That's the trick of anger. It makes you feel like a master while turning you into a puppet. Nietzsche wasn't advocating for meekness or silence. He revered strength, but not the kind of strength that explodes. He honored the strength that contains, that resists, that doesn't need to prove anything. Because when you are truly strong, you do not react, you choose. And anger, in its rawest form, is not a choice. It is a reaction, one that reveals just how deeply someone else has reached into your mind, into your identity, and shaken it. Power is not shouting back. Power is walking away, and knowing that no one controls your peace but you. So here's Nietzsche's first truth, and maybe his harshest. Anger isn't dominance, it's defeat. Let's peel back the mask. Why do some people shout the loudest when they're challenged? Why does disagreement make them explode and criticism ignite a firestorm inside? Nietzsche would tell you, because they are not strong. They are fragile. You see, rage is not born from clarity. It's born from fear, from insecurity, from a desperate need to protect an illusion. The illusion of control, of certainty, of identity. The louder a man screams, the more he's trying to silence a voice inside himself, the voice that whispers, "You might be wrong. You might be weak. You might not be who you pretend to be." And when we are unsure of who we are, we attack. Not because we are powerful, but because we are terrified. Rage is the defense mechanism of the ego. It flares up not when we are strong, but when our self-image is under siege. The fragile self shouts because it can't risk being questioned. That's why the truly powerful rarely raise their voice. They don't need to. Their presence is enough. Their silence speaks louder than any argument. But the weak? They rely on volume, on spectacle, on emotional noise. Because deep down, they know that if they don't shout, the truth might echo louder than they can bear. Nietzsche saw this dynamic play out everywhere. In religion, in politics, in families. He saw that most people live in a reactive trance, constantly defending, constantly projecting, constantly afraid. They mistake reaction for conviction. They believe that to fight back is to be strong. But strength, real strength, doesn't panic when it's challenged. It listens, it questions, it chooses. And sometimes, it walks away in total silence, without losing a single ounce of power. So the next time someone erupts in rage, ask yourself, are they strong, or are they screaming so they don't collapse? Because Nietzsche knew what most people forget. The weak shout, not because they are powerful, but because they are afraid you'll hear the truth if they don't. Anger feels powerful. It surges through your body like fire, making you feel alive, certain, righteous. But Nietzsche would ask you, is that you in control? Or is that your ego, hijacking your mind? Let's be honest. When you're angry, you're not thinking clearly. You're reacting, fast, impulsively, without reflection. And in that moment, you feel certain. Not because you're right, but because your mind has shut down every alternative. That's the trap of anger. It creates the illusion of control, while stealing your actual control away. In Nietzsche's eyes, true control is not about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself, your impulses, your fears, your reactions. And when you're angry, you surrender that mastery. You become a puppet of your most primal instincts. Think about it. How many times have you said something in rage that you later regretted? How many bridges have you burned, not because it was necessary, but because it felt justified in the heat of the moment? Anger narrows your vision. It makes the world black and white. You're right, they're wrong. You're good, they're evil. But life is never that simple, and Nietzsche knew that. He warned us that anyone who clings to certainty in a world of complexity is not strong, but deluded. When anger takes the wheel, your ego convinces you that you're in control. But the truth is, you're out of alignment with your values, your goals, even your true self. You lash out not to fix the situation, but to protect your pride. And pride is a fragile thing. That's why Nietzsche didn't praise those who reacted quickly. He praised those who could endure, who could wait, who could resist the urge to explode, and instead transform that energy into clarity. Because that's where real power is born. Not in the outburst, but in the restraint. Not in the noise, but in the stillness behind it. So the next time you feel anger boiling up inside you, pause. Ask yourself, am I in control, or am I being controlled by my need to feel in control? That question alone might save you from becoming the very thing you despise. Have you ever felt that burning need to prove yourself? To win an argument, not because it brings truth, but because it protects your pride? That, right there, is the ego's trap. A cage built from insecurity, fear, and the illusion that dominance is power. Friedrich Nietzsche warned us, our obsession with being right isn't a show of strength. It's a symptom of internal weakness. A fragile ego, terrified of being exposed, and so we talk louder, argue harder, refuse to bend. Because to admit we were wrong would mean death to the false self we've constructed. But let's be honest. Who are you without your opinions? Without your intellectual armor? Without the mask you wear in every debate? If that thought terrifies you, it should. Because the moment you need to be right is the moment you've stopped growing. You've chosen safety over truth, comfort over curiosity. And your mind, once expansive, shrinks to fit the narrow space your ego allows. Nietzsche called this the sickness of smallness, the herd mentality disguised as confidence. He saw that most people cling to certainty not because they understand, but because they fear uncertainty. They'd rather defend a lie they've known for years than confront a truth that might unsettle everything. And here lies the paradox. The more you insist on being right, the more wrong you become. Because in that state, you stop listening, you stop observing, you stop learning. You're no longer in pursuit of wisdom, you're in pursuit of validation. And validation is the drug of the insecure. The Übermensch, Nietzsche's vision of the evolved human, doesn't argue to win. They don't scream to be heard. They observe. They reflect. And when they speak, they don't aim to dominate. They aim to illuminate. You see, true power doesn't come from being right. It comes from being free. Free from the need to defend your ego. Free from the fear of appearing weak. free to be wrong, and still whole. So the next time you feel that fire to prove someone wrong, ask yourself, is it truth you seek, or simply to protect the image you've built? Because the louder the ego screams, the more it reveals its prison walls, and the one who cannot lose an argument is already lost. Strength doesn't shout. It doesn't pound the table or drown out the room with noise. It simply is. You've seen them before. The ones who don't flinch when provoked. The ones who hold eye contact, not out of intimidation, but out of calm certainty. They don't rush to defend themselves. They don't need to, because they know who they are. Nietzsche believed that true strength lies not in overcoming others, but in overcoming the self. And when you've conquered your inner chaos, when you've buried the need for approval, for dominance, for applause, you become untouchable. Why don't the strong argue? Because they have nothing to prove. They don't crave the last word. They're not addicted to being understood. They don't enter every conversation looking for a battlefield. They enter looking for insight, or not at all. You see, the person who must be heard is still dependent on external validation. But the one who has already heard themselves, who has looked within, questioned their values, wrestled with their shadows, they no longer need to be loud. Silence becomes their language. Precision becomes their power. Nietzsche's Übermensch, the transcendent human, embodies this. He walks alone if he must, not because he despises others, but because he no longer needs their approval to exist. He doesn't waste breath convincing the herd of his truth. He simply lives it. And in doing so, he speaks louder than any argument ever could. Think of a sword. It doesn't need to be waved wildly to be dangerous. Its power lies in restraint, in timing, in clarity of motion. The same is true of the strong. They strike only when necessary, and even then, with intention, not impulse. They don't need to tear others down to lift themselves up. They don't need to be seen as right, because they're already aligned with something deeper than opinion, principle. So if you find yourself always fighting, always needing to win, ask, what am I compensating for? We live in an era of noise. Scroll your feed, turn on the news, or walk into any online debate, and it's a battle of who can scream the loudest, tweet the fastest, or shame the hardest. Everyone is yelling. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, validated. But Nietzsche would have asked, what does all this noise actually mean? He warned, long before smartphones and comment sections, that those who chase power through spectacle are already lost. True strength, he believed, does not need attention. It does not need applause. Because real power is quiet. Not silent in apathy, but silent in self-mastery. In today's world, the weak are mistaken for strong because they're the loudest in the room. The algorithm rewards outrage. Retweets reward anger. The mob rewards conformity disguised as morality. But Nietzsche would have seen right through it, because he understood that noise is often a cover for insecurity. Those who are deeply rooted in themselves don't need to post every opinion. They don't seek validation through digital combat. They live, act, build, and move, without a need for public permission. He would have called this age the triumph of the herd, where individual strength is smothered beneath collective noise, where the need to be seen outweighs the need to become, where people define their value not by their inner compass, but by likes, views, shares. In this world, Nietzsche's Overman, the evolved human, is more relevant than ever. He stands apart, not because he's arrogant, but because he refuses to sell his soul for attention. He chooses depth over reach, solitude over applause, purpose over popularity. Ask yourself, how much of what you share is to express yourself, and how much is to be approved? If the crowd can shape your mood, your values, or your direction, then you're not free. You're still reacting, still performing. Power, Nietzsche reminds us, is found in the one who no longer needs an audience. And ironically, when you stop chasing attention, you begin to command respect. Because in a world where everyone is shouting, the one who walks in quiet certainty becomes magnetic. The next time you're tempted to argue online, to clap back, to prove your worth, pause. Ask, am I acting from strength or from fear of being ignored? Nietzsche's message is this: if your power needs to be loud, it's probably not power at all. In an age where outrage is sold as courage and fury is branded as justice, we must ask, is rage truly rebellion? Or just another form of submission? Nietzsche would have called it a trick of the herd, a mask that the powerless wear to feel powerful. Rage feels righteous. It surges through the veins like fire. It gives you a voice, a cause, a direction. It makes you feel alive, certain, invincible. But here's the danger. Emotion, unchecked, is a tyrant. It convinces you that shouting is action, that blaming is transformation, that fury is revolution. But Nietzsche warned, the deeper the rage, the deeper the resentment. And resentment, as he called it, is not rebellion. It is the reaction of the weak, of those who feel powerless but refuse to transform themselves. Instead, they lash outward, vilify others, and call it morality. True rebellion, Nietzsche said, begins not in the streets, but in the soul. It's not about tearing down others, but rising above yourself. It's not reactive, it's reflective. The one who rebels with rage is still chained to the thing they hate. But the one who rebels with vision, that person is free. Look around you. Much of what is labeled as protest is performance. Screaming into the void, canceling strangers, echo chambers masquerading as justice. But none of it challenges the self. None of it demands growth. It only demands conformity. That, Nietzsche would say, is not rebellion. It's surrender to the emotion, to the mob, to the system of thought you claim to oppose. He didn't dismiss emotion entirely. He knew its power, but he warned us never to let it rule. Because when emotion becomes king, reason dies. And when reason dies, so does the possibility of becoming something greater. Ask yourself this: the last time you were furious, did that fury build anything? Did it elevate you? Or did it simply feed a fire that consumed your peace, your clarity, your direction? There is a reason why Nietzsche admired those who mastered themselves more than those who mastered others. Because the hardest war is not fought outside, it is fought inside. Rebellion is not loud. It does not demand attention. True rebellion is quiet, disciplined, razor-focused. It is the refusal to let your mind be ruled by your own feelings. So the next time rage rises in you, pause. Ask, is this the beginning of transformation, or just another distraction? Because if your rebellion only burns others, but never builds you, it was never rebellion at all. Imagine a person who does not flinch at insult, who remains still as the world howls, who, in the face of chaos, breathes, not to respond, but to understand. That is not weakness, that is power. And for Nietzsche, that is the Übermensch. The Overman, Übermensch, is not concerned with winning arguments or proving superiority. He doesn't crave applause. He doesn't rage when he's challenged. Because his power does not come from reaction. It comes from direction. He is not above emotion, but he is not ruled by it. In a world addicted to outrage, the calm man appears strange. suspicious even. People ask, "Don't you care?" As if passion must always look like panic. But the overman knows, flailing is not flying. To react to everything is to be enslaved by everything. The overman has transcended this. He has learned the art of restraint, not as passivity, but as precision. His silence is not emptiness, but control. His calmness is not indifference, but clarity. While others drown in noise, he listens to a deeper frequency, the rhythm of his own will. Nietzsche did not idealize passivity. He despised the meek obedience of the herd. But he also scorned those who pretended that volatility was strength. The overman is neither submissive nor explosive. He is centered, anchored in self-mastery. This is not a person easily provoked, because provocation only works on the insecure. To be calm is not to be cold. It is to possess your own temperature, set not by the crowd, but by your character. Think of the great leaders who changed the world, not through shouting, but by standing firm in a storm. They didn't need to scream. Their presence spoke louder than words. That is what Nietzsche admired. Not noise, but depth. Not force, but form. Not chaos, but command. And this command is not about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself, your impulses, your ego, your need to be right, to be seen, to be praised. The overman has passed through that fire and come out forged. You want to know real power? It's walking away from the argument you could win because it's not worth your time. It's choosing vision over vengeance, stillness over spectacle. Because those who are calm when others are chaotic, those who move slowly while the herd panics, those who act with intention, not instinct, they are already free, not above the world, but no longer caged by it. They want you angry, not because they care about your justice, but because angry people are easier to manipulate, easier to sell to, easier to divide, easier to distract. And in this age of clickbait, outrage, and emotional warfare, the world doesn't just tolerate your anger, it profits from it. Every time you lose control, someone gains it. A headline you click out of rage, a product you buy to feel better, a comment you post that fuels the algorithm. Your rage is the fuel that powers a machine designed to keep you reactive, not reflective. But Nietzsche warned us, true power does not lie in the reaction. It lies in the refusal to be pulled by it. Because the final battle isn't out there. It's not against them, or the system, or even the trolls. It's you versus your own reflexes. You against your conditioned responses. You against the dopamine addiction to conflict. You against the part of you that would rather be right and outraged than quiet and free. That's what makes this battle so difficult. Because it's internal. Because it's invisible. Because no one will cheer for you when you win. But it's the only victory that matters. Mastering the self isn't glamorous. It doesn't trend. It doesn't go viral. But it liberates. The world doesn't need more reactors. It needs more masters. People who can pause before striking, reflect before responding, and lead without being led by emotion. Nietzsche didn't ask you to suppress your fire. He asked you to wield it, to not let your anger burn your house down, but to make it the forge where you build your will. Because rage might feel powerful, but it is borrowed power, given to you by others and taken from you just as quickly. But discipline, clarity, restraint, that's earned power. That's yours. When you stop giving the world your buttons to push, you stop being a puppet. That is what this part of the journey is about. Not being passive, not being numb, but rising above the noise with a kind of quiet defiance. A will that doesn't need to shout, because it's already decided. This is your battlefield, and your freedom is not won in argument. It's one in every moment you choose not to be provoked. And now we arrive at the end. Not the end of the world, not the end of anger, but the end of an illusion that anger is strength. Because the truth, anger is not power. It is what happens when you've already lost it. When you explode, it feels like control. But look deeper. It's surrender to your instincts, to your ego, to the very systems that trained you to react instead of reflect. In Nietzsche's words, he who cannot obey himself will be commanded. Anger is the moment you stop commanding yourself. You become predictable, exploitable, easy to corner, easy to steer. True power, true strength, is not what surges in a scream. It's what remains in silence. It's the calm in the storm that doesn't flinch. Because when you master yourself, your rage, your wounds, your need to win, you become untouchable. Not because you don't feel, but because you know how to choose. And that is the final test. This world will give you countless reasons to rage. It will try to convince you that fury is bravery, that fighting louder makes you stronger, that unleashing your anger means taking back control. But it's a trap. Every outburst tightens the leash. Every argument drains your clarity. Every impulsive shout steals from the life you could be building. So, what do? You stop confusing reaction with rebellion. You learn to pause. You learn to breathe. You learn to listen, not just to others, but to the deeper truth within yourself. You ask, is this helping me grow? Is this making me free? Or is this just another chain painted red, screaming for attention? Nietzsche didn't want you numb. He wanted you awake. He didn't want silence from fear. He wanted stillness from strength. So when the next moment comes, when you feel that fire, that fury rising inside, remember this: you don't have to obey it. You can rise above it. Because in the end, the strongest among us are not those who shout the loudest, but those who no longer need to shout at all. That is the overman. That is mastery. That is your path, if you choose it. So, what will it be? Will you keep giving your power away? Or will you finally take it back? The world doesn't need more noise. It needs people who have mastered themselves. It needs you, clear, calm, unshakable,